Hello everyone, I'm Herrick Kimball behind the camera on this early June 27th morning. The day is going to be hot and muggy, so early morning like this is the time to be out in the garden, checking it over, doing a little cultivating. I came up with the mini bed gardening concept 6 years ago, and this garden is now in the 5th growing season. The garden concept, mini bed gardening concept, as I envisioned it, has been a total success, really. At this point, I can say a total success. Very manageable, very satisfying, very productive. Now I'm going to show you some different mini beds in the garden, show you what's going on here at this time of the year. This is the time of the year when everything really takes off. There's a burst of growth, both of weeds and of the plantings in the mini beds. And the beauty of mini bed gardening, one of the beauties, one of the big pluses, is that 78% of the area of the garden is under a plastic mulch. There will be no weeds to pull. So it's only in the mini beds that there needs to be any cultivation, mulching, etc., or natural mulching, as you'll see. So let me just show you some of the beds and what's going on. We'll start with these peas. I put a tomato cage in this mini bed when I planted these peas. These are rose blush peas. Actually got a couple blossoms here. They grew up straight and tall as that cage, and then they tipped over. And that's okay, they still grow. You can still harvest the peas. Let's come up here and take a look at one. This has got nice blush to it. And these are edible pod peas. Excuse me while I take a bite. Quite good. Quite good. So I've got a whole row of peas down through here, different kinds. These are the only tall ones. And some of these beds have weeds along with the pea plants, as you can see right there. We're going to be pulling these peas up soon, and I'll replant the beds. Over here, zone in over here, spinach going to seed. Several beds of spinach going to seed, and I'm going to get those cleaned up pretty quick here. Here we have beets, a beet bed, and another beet bed. They're ready to start eating. We love our beet greens. Over here, we got peas. Over here, and here is the Freckles lettuce. This was a bed full, and I have selected 3 plants to not pick. I'm going to let those go to seed, and I'm going to save the seed. Lettuce seed's very easy to save. Here we have a parsley bed, 5 plants, 5 plantings. That's doing very well. I planted those on the 27th of March, exactly 3 months ago. And it was cold out, and I just sprinkled the seeds in the 5 spots and put a little bit of soil over them, and they sprouted when they were ready, and they've done very well. I've got chard over here, and 5 spots, 5 hills, as we use the term in this in the gardening lexicon. A hill is not a mound, but a planting spot. I've got 5 planting spots there. I put a few seeds in each spot. Over here, we've got our comfrey. That has grown tall. I've cut it down and I've mulched the beds with it. Comfrey's a great mulch, a great fertilizer. Here, I planted this mini bed with oats in the spring, and they are maturing. And when they've matured fully, I'll hand strip the seeds off and save them for planting in more mini beds. And I'll use I'll cut the stalks down low, or I'll pull them and use the stalks for mulch. Here we have kale bed, looking very good. And here's a new idea right here. This bed and many others in this garden are planted to buckwheat. And I used the 13 spot planting template and a few seeds in each spot. And that's going to work out pretty well, I think. Now, let's take a look here. We've got onion beds. Onions are doing very well. We'll right down through here. I'll show you each of the beds. What is it? The 5x7 planting template, I believe, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 5x6, 5x7 planting template. I can't remember. I've got it in a video, and that works very well for these onions. And so there we go. Come down and show that view there. Yeah, I'm happy with my onions. Got them mulched with leaves. When they were young, put the leaves in. And we still get some weeds, but it's no big deal to pull them. We always get weeds around the perimeter like that. Again, no big deal. Just pull them and throw them in there for mulch. Okay, so, oh yeah, well, here's another weed. We might as well pick it while we're here. And we'll pivot around. I'll show you that I have celery. Now, that's celery mulched. The bed is mulched with goldenrod stalks, young goldenrod stalks, before it went to seed off in the outlying areas around my garden. I pulled them. And I've got 4 celery plants there. Celery needs a lot of water to grow well. And I don't water these at all. And they always grow well in the mini beds, because the mini beds are islands of growth and fertility, a productive growth, surrounded by captured subsoil moisture. So these plants get all they need without me coming out here and watering. My UPS driver last year picked up some packages and said, "How many hours a night do you water that garden?" And I told him, "None. I don't water the garden at all." And he was incredulous. Here we have broccoli, 4 broccoli plants. Got a small one, and the others are larger. They're looking a little better. Small one's still productive. Okay, garlic. Got the garlic beds here. These are pretty close to harvest time. And I've got 9 beds with 13 garlics in each one. You can see the scapes here. We do eat the scapes. We don't eat them all. And my wife has pickled the scapes. The bottoms are tender. Use a dill pickle recipe, and they come out pretty nice. But she hasn't done that this year. We've had them in salads and stir fry, but more scapes than we can use. Now, let me back up and show you what we have here. This is my spaghetti squash mini bed, doing very well. And here, this is interesting, bush beans. I have only 3 bush bean plants there. I used the 13 spot planting template to plant that bed, and only 3 bean plants came up. So I'll let them grow. We'll see what we can get from them. I have always had a problem growing beans in my garden. And beans should be the easiest plant to grow. And it is among the easiest plants to grow. But for some reason, I don't have a lot of success with beans. So you can see that I've planted some lettuce in there, kind of filled in where the beans did not grow. And I had the same problem over here. Only a few beans plants emerged. I've got the cat excluder on here. I've got some lettuce planted in the open spaces there. All right, got a lettuce bed here, fresh lettuce bed. Use the 13 spot planting template. That's going to fill up very nicely. Here we have chard that came up by itself. Last year this garden got out of hand. Even with the plastic, the mini beds, if you don't keep them weeded and mulched, they'll get out of hand. And that's what happened. And the chard that was there went to seed. But look, it self-sowed itself, and I've got some great chard in there. And I've planted some wax bean seeds in there a few days ago, and look, only 1 plant has come up right there. So something about beans. Here we got a, I think this is the Zephyr squash, yes. Zephyr squash. Got my planting stake there. And that's looking super. It's going to fill up and overflow that bed very nicely. Got more chard over there. I've got a whole row, or like the rest of this row is the buckwheat planted as a cover crop until I figure out what I want to put in those beds. And I'll just let that grow. I'll let it blossom and it'll bring in pollinators. And yeah, I don't have to harvest that at any particular time, but whenever I need the bed, I will. Otherwise, I'll let it grow. Now, my strawberries were disappointing this year. I had some freezing damage, but I'm letting the runners, I'm rooting some of them. I'm going to do summer transplanting of these runners. Look at only two strawberries survived in this bed, but I've got the runners, and once they've rooted well, we're in the shade here, but once they've rooted well, I'll transfer them to other mini beds, and then I'll plant these to a cover crop, figure out what I want to do with those beds. More buckwheat. I don't need the cat excluder on there anymore. And we'll come on down here. I'll show you that I have a spaghetti squash here. And I have experimented this year with mulching with some peat moss, like you see right there. I've never mulched with peat moss before, and it seemed like a good idea. And it's not a bad idea, but the problem is that my cats love that peat moss covering. It's like cat litter to them. It's very inviting. And you can see that I've thrown some comfrey stalks in here to try to deter the cats. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but the spaghetti squash is doing well right there. Here I have a section of garden that is covered with the tire sidewalls and plastic to kind of smother it out. It was quite weedy, and it had blueberry bushes in there that never did well. So we're going to get that killed off, smothered off, and extend the mini bed garden into that probably next year. Now, there I've got a sad looking potato plant, which I won't dwell on because I have some better looking ones right down through here. These are looking super. I've squashed a couple of the potato bugs, but I haven't seen any damage yet. This particular bed is mulched with weeds. Lots of weeds. I've layered them in here. They've died down, and I should put more weeds in there. I don't want the potatoes that grow in there to get sunlight on them. So another one. Now here's another idea that is new this year. I'm mulching this bed and one more potato bed with wood chips, which will certainly keep the sunlight from getting to the potatoes, any potatoes that form near the surface. And I will not incorporate those chips into the soil. I'll pull that mulch off when I harvest that bed. Now, potatoes, you don't grow a year's supply of potatoes in mini beds. It's potatoes for summer eating, summer and fall eating, not storage potatoes. This is mulched again with weeds, and then we've got a potato plant, beautiful potato plant, mulched with the wood chips, and this one's mulched with weeds. And you can see I pulled the weeds, threw them in, and a few of them have managed to get what they need to keep growing. But you just pull them up, lay them back down, and that works. We'll take a look here at these pepper beds. 4 pepper plants to a bed. They're going to grow up, fill that nicely. I've got this mulched with grass, a tall grass that I went with my sickle and harvested bunches of it from the field next door. Another pepper bed, another pepper bed. Each one's a different kind of pepper, and another pepper bed right there. Okay, we're getting near the end. Let's come over here and I'll show you a bed full of weeds. Look at that. Now, that's not something I should show you, right? But I am, because that's what happens. But you know, that's not bad. Unfortunately, this thistle, has gone to seed. But the rest of that bed, for the most part, I can pull up and take it and put it right over on those potato beds. Everything I pull up. I don't have a compost pile for garden refuse. I just use it for a mulch. We do have a little compost pile for kitchen stuff, but in the garden I pull the weeds. In the garden I pull the weeds, and around the garden I pull and harvest weeds and use them for mulch. Now here is another new idea for me this year. This tomato is mulched. This tomato mini bed is mulched, and I've got 4 of them down through there, mulched with a beautiful, dark, mysterious mulch. And if you don't know, and I would be surprised if you did know, this mulch is buckwheat hulls. Buckwheat hulls. And buckwheat hulls are expensive, and I would not normally use them for mulch, but we bought a big bag of buckwheat hulls some years ago because we were going to make buckwheat hull pillows. We never did. The bag has been kicking around, like I said, for years. So I decided, hey, I've got it. I'm going to use it. It's a pretty neat mulch. And look at this tomato plant amidst its mulch. It's just a fine example of a tomato in its cage. It's going to grow very well. Now here I've mulched this tomato with the peat moss, and when it rains, that peat moss splashes up onto the leaves when it rains hard. You can see it over here actually, but now let me just show you that these leaves are dirty, but they are low. These leaves, I'm going to be cutting these off because I make a point of always cutting off leaves that are going to reach down and touch the soil. Here's a great example. You see this tomato plant right here? I have cut off all the bottom leaves. None of those leaves touch the ground, and I'll continue to do that, and I need to do that over here, like that one right there. We're going to cut that right off. As soon as I'm done with this video, I'll cut off all these low tomato branches. Now, okay, let me just show you. I was given some tomato plants that were tall, quite tall, and stringy and stressed, and I planted them here a week ago, and I don't know how well they're going to do. They'll probably come around. I need to get these beds mulched. I need to do some work on them, but I was waiting to see if they took off or greened up and started looking more healthy, and they probably will. Okay, here we have beds that I planted to rye in the spring. I have more mini beds than I know what to do with. Let's put it that way. I've got more things to plant this year, but these mini beds were planted very thickly, too thickly, to rye, and they've got the roots. We've got the roots in the soil. The microbiology in the soil is very happy because it has those roots, and the soil wants plants, and the microbiology wants plants. Now here we've got 5 raspberry plants, 1 plant to a mini bed. These were planted just this year because I had a raspberry patch that kind of reached its life limit. It happens after 10-15 years or so. Can't remember how old it was, but it had been a long time, and the vitality of the planting was going down. So I've planted 5 raspberry plants here. This is, I've got my stakes on here. This is, can you read that? Latham Red. Put the year, 2021. These stakes are in my Planet Whiz Bang idea book for gardeners. I talk about making stakes, different ways to make garden stakes. And this is a bush planting technique for growing raspberries that is in the book also. A technique that was promoted by, oh, what was his name? I'll put it on the screen. I'm having a momentary memory loss. E.P. Rowe. Edward Payson Rowe, the famous berry man of the 1800s. He advocated the idea of bush planting, like you see right there. So we've reached the end of the garden. I have the asparagus. Here comes a car. Hey, let's look at the car as it goes by. Truck. So the asparagus bed, I did videos about that, planting that years ago. 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago now. I lose track. And we have, I've got 2 rows there, and we've harvested asparagus, and we love that asparagus. It's a perennial. I don't do a whole lot to that bed. In the spring I'll cultivate it. You wouldn't know it with the weeds you see there. But those weeds, you get a good rain, the soil loosens up. Those weeds are getting about tall enough, 10 inches a foot before they go to seed. If I need mulching material for my mini beds, I'll go right on down through there and just pull what I want, pull what I need, and transport it right over to a mini bed. So there you go. That's the mini bed on this June 27th day as we're heading into the summer months. I have lots to do here, but nothing is pressing. It's under control. It's well managed. Last year it got ahead of me, even with the mini bed system. It got ahead of me, but it's not going to this year. I'm redeeming myself as a gardener. These beds are looking good, and I'm going to stay on top of them. And there you go. Mini bed gardening. I have a report, a trilogy. It's reports from several years I've put together into a PDF. I'll put a link in the description below if you're interested in that. There's lots of videos on YouTube here that I've made over the years showing different techniques and explaining the concept. There's more to it than just plastic on the ground. There's actually a lot more to it if you take the system as a whole. And yeah, so there you go. High culture. That's what I call it. High culture in mini beds. So I've got my work cut out for me. I got to cut those tomato lower stems off, and I'm going to pull off some, clean off some mini beds here with the spinach that's gone to seed, going to seed. We get a few leaves off of there maybe for breakfast, and we'll finish where we started with a rose blush pea. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you later.